The night you first gazed at me, the moonlight froze between us, and my heart swelled with words that threatened to break free like wild doves, yet I swallowed every syllable. My silence was not absence, it was a trembling shield forged to protect a love too fragile for the sudden clang of daylight. Even as my pulse drummed your name, I bit down on yearning, afraid that one misplaced whisper would scatter the delicate petals of possibility before they even touched the ground. I stayed silent because the world around us hummed with listening ears, measuring each heartbeat for scandal or weakness. I have worn a crown of expectations since childhood, and every jewel in that crown is a promise to protect my people, my family, the very skyline beyond our windows. If I spoke my truth too soon, it might have echoed through corridors like thunder, disrupting the harmony so many depend on. I chose instead to let love blossom in the quiet, like a rose that leans into the night for safety. My love, do you remember the evenings when I watched you from across crowded halls, offering nothing but a polite nod? Inside me, entire symphonies crashed, violins of devotion, cellos of longing, drums of fear. I practiced the art of restraint because I believed an unfinished melody is better than a ruined one. I feared the ferocity of my affection could burn us both before we felt its warmth. There were moments I wanted to shout your name from the highest tower, letting the desert wind carry it across every dune until even the stars learned its sound. But I have seen words become arrows, and I knew too many would aim them back at you. My silence built walls, a fortress of hush, to keep you safe from the storms stirred by curious minds and eager headlines that do not consider the cost of their curiosity. I was groomed to solve dilemmas with reason, to choose duty over desire, yet you slipped through the cracks of my discipline, arriving like sunlight piercing through latticed screens. Each time our eyes met, it felt like dawn inside my chest, but dawn comes with its own dangers, blinding brightness, exposed paths. So I sealed my lips and prayed that you could read the morning in my eyes. You might think my silence a cloak of coldness, but it was stitched with the threads of 1,000 sleepless nights. I have traced each contour of your face in memory until it glows brighter than any lantern. I have written your laughter into the margins of royal decrees, letting ink absorb what my voice could not reveal. The reason I remained mute was never lack of feeling, only too much of it. I feared that revealing my heart would force you into shadows, targets for envy disguised as gossip. I have witnessed how adoration can turn into interrogation, how joy can be twisted into leverage. My quiet was my sword, my shield, my prayer mat, all at once. And if one day history accuses me of cowardice, let that same history know it was courage of a different shape, one that bleeds inward to spare another's hurt. Do you know how many times I almost reached for your hand? In carriages, in gardens, in the hush before ceremonies, I felt the electricity between us, a living thread tugging at my fingertips. Yet protocol hovered like a silent guardian, reminding me that one tender gesture could unravel decades of delicate diplomacy. I swallowed the urge and smiled instead, a smile that held the flavor of words unsaid. When storms raged inside me, I sought refuge in poetry. Lines spilled across midnight pages, verses of hidden kingdoms, secret suns, and rivers that dared to change their course for love. Those poems carry our story, each pause, each sigh, etched in metaphors only we would understand. One day I will place that collection in your hands, and you will see that every blank space between the lines is where my silence lived. I stayed silent because timing is a maestro no heart can outrun. I waited for the day when responsibilities would loosen their grip, when the horizon would widen enough for two shadows to merge without fear. I imagined us walking openly beneath that forgiving sky, laughter echoing without restraint. My love, I believed that patience could turn the impossible into the inevitable. Even now, as these words finally spill into light, I sense the old caution stirring, asking if it is safe. But keeping quiet any longer would be a grander betrayal than all the risks combined. For silence, once a sanctuary, has become a prison, and love was never meant to be caged. Let it soar, even if the flight invites storms. And so, my queen, here is the reason I stayed silent. I loved you too fiercely to hand you a half-built world. Every restrained breath was a brick laid in a future worthy of your grace. If you can forgive the hush that cloaked my devotion, then let us break the last remaining wall together, one whisper each, and watch our shared dawn rise at last. The hush that once cocooned my heart has split like dawn's first veil, and in the quiet crack between what was and what will be, I hear your breath join mine. I stand before you stripped of titles, duty, and the echo of ancient expectations, my soul unclothed except for the trembling truth of my devotion. Where once I guarded every heartbeat, now I scatter them at your feet like rose petals on cool marble, asking only that you tread gently because each beat is fragile and wholly yours. The weight of unspoken promises lifts, and the wind that rushes in smells of rain on scorched earth, new growth, new courage, new beginnings. You come closer, and the air between us quivers as though it has a heartbeat of its own, alive with the electricity of delayed union. Your eyes search mine, not for the sparkle of royal certainty but for something more honest, vulnerability, humility, a rawness that proves love has not been dulled by privilege or protocol. I feel your fingers brush mine, tentative yet certain, and it is as if centuries of silent yearning burst into a single touch. In that gesture, I sense oceans shift, calendars rewrite themselves, and every corridor of my palace bends toward this moment as though stone itself understands destiny. I speak your name, the simplest prayer I have ever uttered, and watch your lips curve into a smile that sends constellations spinning in daylight. How strange, that 2 syllables could hold the power to mend all the cracks my silence once carved in our story. We stand in a corridor flooded with late afternoon gold, and I realize it is not the grandeur of architecture but the architecture of hope that matters now. Marble pillars fade behind your profile, carpets fall away under our feet. All that remains is the echo of your quiet laughter and the steady promise of my newly unshackled voice. You tell me that you always heard the hidden music beneath my hush, that even in stillness I sang to you. You confess how you spotted devotion glinting at the edges of my measured smiles, how my restraint felt like the tense string of a bow holding an arrow named forever. Your understanding fills me with a gratitude so vast it might eclipse the sun itself. For the first time, I see my silence reflected not as cowardice but as a lover's imperfect shield. One you recognize, forgive, and gently set aside so we might wield something stronger, candor tempered by grace. Together we walk toward a garden kept secret even from rumor, a place I saved for someday. Jasmine vines spill over lattices, their fragrance thick as moonlight, and fountains murmur lullabies learned from ancient wells. Here, away from the vigilant hum of the capital, away from polished corridors where whispers ricochet, my voice is not a decree but a confession written in the movement of water and petals. I promise that every story we create here will flow into the wider world only when we wish it, on tides we command together. We sit by a pool clear enough to reflect not only our faces but our futures. Each ripple carries a mirrored fragment of us, 2 silhouettes merging, uncertain edges smoothing into certainty. You place your palm on the surface, coaxing soft circles that widen until the entire mirror trembles with possibility. I lay my hand over yours, sealing a pact more binding than parchment. Whatever storms gather, we will break them together like dawn breaks night. I speak of duties still anchored to my name, alliances, councils, the unending churn of governance, and how they need not chain us but challenge us to craft a love that leads instead of hides. You listen, not with resignation but with resolve, suggesting ways compassion can steer policy, how empathy might decorate halls more splendidly than gold. Every word you offer is a lantern hung in my mind, illuminating corridors I never explored because I feared wandering alone. With you, the labyrinth becomes linear, the maze a blessed pilgrimage toward shared vision. Dusk paints the stone's warm rust, and the first star emerges shyly above the citrus trees. I ask if you fear the glare of attention that will follow, the magnifying glass that tests every royal secret. You answer that fear is real but smaller than love, and that what we nurture in honesty can withstand even the fiercest scrutiny. Your bravery ignites sparks in my chest, sparks that leap into promises. I will stand before cameras and councils, not as a ruler excusing his heart, but as a man claiming it. In your reflection shimmering on the water, I glimpse the sovereign I must become, one whose authority blossoms from vulnerability rather than detachment. Night settles like velvet, and lanterns strung along the veranda stir with gentle flames, mirroring constellations overhead. Beneath this tapestry of light, I read you a poem I wrote long ago, a secret tide of verses about silent thunder, hidden horizons, and the courage it takes to wait. The words feel new as they cross my lips, cleansed of the ache that once birthed them. You close your eyes, letting the rhythm wash over you, and I see peace soften your shoulders. In that softening, I recognize the miracle of being seen completely and loved anyway. We rise, hand in hand, and stroll beneath archways where vines braid themselves into living sculptures. Every footstep is an oath, to speak when truth is needed, to hush only when quiet can heal, never again when fear demands retreat. I tell you that tomorrow I will summon advisors, unveil our bond, and trust in the strength of a love already tested by silence. You nod, not as one who follows, but as one who walks beside, equal in bearing and destiny. Together we cross the threshold where secrecy ends and shared story begins. The palace clock tolls a late hour, each chime a note struck in the symphony of our emergence. I feel time itself pausing to bless us, like a benevolent elder cupping our entwined hands. The future approaches with wings spread wide, and we step into its shadow not as prey, but partners prepared to soar. Inside me, the last vestiges of hesitation melt into a certainty bright as sunrise. I realize that silence was never the villain, fear was. And fear, at last, bows before our combined courage. As we part for the night, your gaze lingers on mine, and I know that even the brief dark between now and dawn will buzz with our newfound words, echoing through hallways, finding corners where old doubts once hid. I will lie awake tasting the sweetness of promises kept alive, no longer suffocated by secrecy. And when morning arrives, it will arrive for both of us, two voices, two hearts, one resonance, singing a song so open, so luminous, that the whole world might finally understand why I once stayed silent, and why I will never need to